Welcome to episode number 45 of Legally Contented. I'm your host, Wayne Pollock. This is a Lowdown episode where we review highlights and tease out takeaways from our 5 most recent interview episodes. Episode number 32, Kevin LaCroix. Episode number 35, Aidan Durham. Episode 37, Gerry Oginski. Episode 40, John Strohmeyer. And episode 42, Adam Wash. The whole point of this Lowdown episode is to glean from the guests I have on this podcast who are already doing big things with their content marketing and thought leadership marketing efforts, glean from them takeaways, tips and tricks, things to avoid that you, the listener, can hopefully understand and apply to your own content marketing and thought leadership marketing efforts, or to those of your colleagues if you are assisting with their content marketing and thought leadership marketing efforts. So I hope that these episodes are helpful to you because they are teasing out the important aspects of these interviews and hopefully giving you food for thought that you can begin to apply as soon as possible and make your or your organization's content marketing and thought leadership marketing efforts top-notch and to help you all stand out from your competitors. So let's start with episode 32, Kevin LaCroix. Kevin is an attorney and executive vice president at RT Pro Exec, which is an insurance intermediary focused exclusively on management liability issues. He's been involved in directors and officers liability insurance for over 35 years. And for the last decade and a half, Kevin's published the D&O Diary, which is a blog focused on directors and officers liability. In this episode, Kevin and I discussed, among other things, why he started to experiment with blogging in the D&O space, why he wants to set the D&O industry agenda with his blog instead of just covering industry news and regurgitating what is being discussed in the industry, the mistakes that law firms make all too often when they blog or they curate content, how to build trust with your blog readership and the importance of not violating that trust, why people have referred to him as the Pope and Tom Hanks of D&O insurance, how his blogging has evolved over time, and the professional opportunities that his blog has opened up for him. Kevin and his situation is typical when you have a blogger who is consistently putting out interesting content, is attempting to show the industry what is happening, the interesting themes, interesting news, and providing analysis about that news, not just regurgitating what happened like he is a reporter, but instead going deeper into that news and explaining the relevance of that to his audience, the people in the D&O insurance space. In this first clip, Kevin explains why he blogs, and I think when you listen to it, you're going to hear that it makes perfect sense and is widely applicable to really any professional services practitioner.
My stock and trade is my specialization, and I need to be able to persuade people that might do business with me that I have the requisite specialty that will help them place the business and service their client. One of the ways to do that is to become known as an expert in that field, and that's where the blog comes in. And so I'm developing a brand as an expert on D&O insurance that's not only directed to my most target audience, those would-be partners, but also the D&O insurance generally, the D&O insurers, the D&O claims attorneys. As a result of years of hard work on it, I think I do have a well-established reputation as an expert in the field of directors and officers liability insurance. My existing clientele or prospective future clientele making inquiries about me will hear back from others in the industry what my reputation is, what my profile is, and I'm able to maintain that by an outreach that really at this point encompasses the entire D&O insurance industry. So I'm daily reinforcing my brand as a D&O insurance expert. That's what helps make it something that's worthwhile from a marketing and business development perspective, because it reestablishes my credentials as an expert in my field.
In the second clip, Kevin talks about the mistakes that law firms make. I alluded to this just recently. Mistakes that law firms make when it comes to content, especially in the content creation and content curation side of things.
I see a mistake a lot of law firm blogs make on precisely this point. They may be doing a great job curating and identifying case law, but it's almost like, who cares? Tell me why it matters. What difference does it make? So what that the Second Circuit issued this opinion? What does it matter? What's the significance? How does it fit? How does that affect what I need to be worrying about in my day-to-day job. And I don't think the law firms do that. They do a very good job summarizing the case and saying what the holding is, but they don't take it the next step and say, why does it matter? And I think that, to me, holds back a lot of law firm blogs. They do a great job on what the curatorial services you just described, but they're not marshaling the information in a way that makes it useful and digestible by their audience. And also, it's kind of boring. It would be a lot more interesting if they said the answer to the question, who cares? Then they'd have a blog that people would read because they feel like they need to understand what's going on. So that's maybe not an opinion you solicited, but it's one that I happen to observe a lot about law firm blogs.
In this third clip, Kevin walks through, I guess you could say, indications, hints that his blog is being well read and that people look to him as an authority for his expertise, and he might even be considered a celebrity in the D&O insurance world.
I had two very funny experiences being introduced to international audiences. In May, I spoke to an audience of German insurance professionals in Munich, and the young woman that introduced me as the Pope of D&O, which I thought said something about how much respect or trust I had developed through the years. But even better, just a few weeks ago, I was in Singapore speaking to a insurance industry educational session, and the attorney that introduced me described me as the Tom Hanks of the D&O insurance industry, that I'm highly respected and everybody likes me, which I thought was pretty funny. My wife didn't see the humor of it, but probably nothing will ever top being described as the Pope of D&O. The last anecdote that goes with the Singapore experience is I was approached by a young industry professional who was from the island of Mauritius. And she told me that she wanted to get her picture taken with me. And I said, why on earth do you want to get your picture taken with me? And she says, you're the D&O diary guy. You're world famous. And as I said to my wife later, if somebody from Mauritius tells you you're world famous, at that point, you can probably qualify as world famous. So the blog is out there 24/7, silently reaching people that I don't even know. I can't know who they are, what they're looking for, if they find what they're looking for. But slowly, gradually, over the course of many years, I've managed to greatly expand my reach and reach a very diverse international audience that regularly comes back to my site for things that are important to them for their day-to-day jobs. And they tell me so. They tell me they do that. So it's been great. But it took a long time to get to that point, too.
One of the takeaways from my conversation with Kevin is that blogging and other thought leadership can establish you as an authority because it is your chance to proactively show clients you have the expertise, you have the knowledge and the wisdom to help them with their business and or legal issues. I like to think of this as the Costco sampling idea, where when you go to Costco, obviously you can walk down the aisles and there are people who are happy to give you samples of pretzel chips or cheeses or some other kind of food, even post-COVID. I'm seeing sampling coming back at the types of retailers that do sample food. But Costco gives you a little bit of a taste. So you buy the entire product. You buy the huge 97-ounce bag of pretzel chips. But without that sample, you might never know how good it tastes. And it's the same idea with lawyers and thought leadership. You have to give a sample of your knowledge and your wisdom. You have to show current prospective clients and referral sources that you have the goods, you have the knowledge and wisdom that they can rely on. When you don't, they don't get a chance to sample. When you don't give out your samples, they may never know how smart you are. They may never understand what you could do for them because there's no indications from you that you have that knowledge and wisdom. So blogging and thought leadership obviously gives that sampling to clients and referral sources, past, current, and prospective ones, and it gives you a chance to show them before they buy that you are the right person, your firm's the right firm for them. Another point that I thought was interesting that I don't hear a lot of people talk about in the content marketing and thought leadership marketing space, the importance of building trust with your audience to keep them coming back. Not really in any of those clips, but we talked in the interview about you can't just build an audience and then give them crap content. You can't build an audience and then just not show up after a while. You have to build trust with your audience. But when you do build trust with your audience, they keep coming back. They become fans of yours. They ask you to take pictures with them. They call you the Tom Hanks or the Pope of the practice area that you're in. But the point is that trust matters and you have to build a relationship with your audience. And that's simply by providing them good content consistently, not insulting them, not selling to them, but giving them educational information that they can use without acting like you were expecting a sale because of that. Okay, next up is episode 35 with Aidan Durham. Aidan is the owner of 180 Law Co., a law firm providing business law and intellectual property services to small businesses. Her YouTube channel, All Up in Your Business, has more than 133,000 subscribers and is her main marketing channel. Think about that, 133,000 subscribers. In this episode, Aidan and I talked about a number of things, such as the importance of deciding the right tone and level of informality to strike when you're recording YouTube videos, misconception lawyers have about what they need to do to actually shoot YouTube videos, how her videos allow her to connect to current and prospective clients in a unique way, the role mindset plays when you're a prolific, consistent content creator, why she's happy to have current and prospective clients ask about her dog, and her advice for lawyers, including B2B lawyers, by the way, who are contemplating building a YouTube following. In this first clip, I asked her, why did you choose YouTube? What about YouTube made it a match for her marketing and business development efforts?
I really wanted to lead in my marketing and everything kind of public facing. I wanted to lead with personality rather than, my achievements and my accolades and my degrees and all of that. I wanted the personality to be kind of the first thing, because that was my whole shtick, is that I'm not your average lawyer. I'm not your everyday, traditional standard lawyer. And so that's where the video idea mainly came from, is how do I get my personality in front of potential clients? And video seemed like the best way to do that. And then with YouTube specifically, I knew that I wanted to work with clients. Well, at the time, I myself was a young woman. I was in my late 20s. And so I wanted to also work with younger entrepreneurs and younger business owners kind of in my same age range. And I knew, if I have a question, if I need info, I'm going to YouTube to find it, or at least Google, which owns YouTube. So I knew I'm going there. My clients, my potential clients are probably there. So why wouldn't I put my videos? Why wouldn't I be there to get in front of them? And I did do, and I still do like blogs, written blogs that go along with my videos. But initially I wanted to try to avoid having to write stuff. Just getting out of that, I learned pretty quickly for SEO purposes, I'd still have to write things even to go along with the videos. But even that, all of my additional marketing efforts, kind of everything boils down ultimately to videos and YouTube. It all kind of points back to YouTube in one way or another.
In the second clip, I asked her a question that seems like an afterthought, but is probably a bigger deal than many people think, which is when you are the face of your firm, whether it's through any marketing channel, but specifically here, YouTube, when you're the face of your firm, how does that translate? Do people always want you? Are they going to be upset if they don't get you? They get your associate, they get your paralegal. In this clip, Aidan talked about that and how she is structuring her law firm to account for the fact that people see her and want her, but they might not always get her.
Yeah, so I have had some concerns about being the face, and what if I want to scale and hire associates? Is that going to ruin this whole thing if people aren't working with me? I haven't really had to dive deep into that, because for the most part it has just been me, but the little experiences I've had have been surprising, that it's not as big of an issue as I expect it would probably be. I've had an administrative assistant before who has handled a lot of the client communication. No one had an issue that it was my assistant talking to them rather than me. But yeah, that is something that I have struggled with, and deciding what is the direction that I want my firm to go in, and how do I reconcile that with still kind of being the face of the practice. For now, I don't plan on expanding drastically or bringing on associates, so I'm figuring I'll continue to do it for the time being, at least. And as far as the being a woman, the comments, it's been, I am grateful that the overwhelming feedback that I get in comments and on social media is positive, overwhelmingly positive. My troll count is pretty low in YouTube world. It's good, but certainly I've had plenty of comments where it's about my looks, which, even if it's complimentary, that's not what this is about. Like, thank you if you're saying something nice, but I'd rather you be talking about the topic at hand rather than my looks, because that's not the thing. But, it's annoying, but it could be a lot worse. And I've been lucky that for the most part, it's only good feedback. And, but yeah, there have been some really weird, creepy comments for sure. And I've gotten some weird emails and stuff too, but I think it all kind of goes with the territory. And even, even the troll comments, engagement is engagement. YouTube sees more activity, more views. As long as they're watching the videos, comment all the crap you want. I don't care. Hit the subscribe button. That's what's important to me.
2 takeaways from my conversation with Aiden. First, you have to go to the medium that suits your goal and is where your audience will be. So for her, small business owners on the younger side of things, that was a perfect YouTube match. But that might not be the most appropriate channel for all attorneys who serve small businesses and who do intellectual property law. They might need to do the blog route, or they might need to go on the podcast route because their demographics of their target clients isn't the right fit for YouTube. Or maybe it is, and they need to understand that and move away from blogs or podcasts to video. Another point is that it's a little bit about you when it comes to marketing and thought leadership. It's mostly about your audience. If you are going to be terrible on camera, and no matter how much practice you get, you're going to be terrible on a YouTube video, then maybe you shouldn't do YouTube video. But at the same time, if that's going to be the best chance for you to reach your audience, maybe you suck it up and you just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to do it on YouTube. I'm going to find a way to persevere, learn how to tackle these videos, and just become as excellent as I can on this channel. So again, it's a little bit about you, but it's mostly about your audience. Second big takeaway, the importance of building a connection with your audience. Mentioned this with Kevin LaCroix's recap, and same thing here with Aiden's. Her clients, her leads are talking to her about her dog and asking about her dog. Now, on one hand, that can seem a little intrusive, a little strange that you've got random people asking you about your dog and your family and anything else you mention online in your videos or on your blog posts or on social media. But that's how you build a connection. And when you've got a whole bunch of other lawyers out there who can do the same thing you can do as well as you, maybe a little better than you, you have to build a connection. We have to build relationships. And we can do that through content. We can do that through YouTube videos like Aiden, or through blog posts like Kevin does, or podcasts. You can build relationships with people. You have to be mindful of that. This is not just transactional. This is not just cold delivering of content to an audience and walking away. This is about building a relationship through that content with your audience. Okay, next up, episode number 37 with Gerry Oginski. Gerry is a New York medical malpractice attorney. He's created over 3,400 videos to market his medical malpractice law firm and was one of the pioneers of using educational videos to market a lawyer and a law firm. If he wasn't the pioneer, then maybe he was one of the first 2 or 3 lawyers to do this back in 2007. In our episode, we talked about what caused him to turn to YouTube. His advertising wasn't working. His Yellow Pages ads weren't working. When he started to get on YouTube, people said, what the hell are you doing? What do you mean a 3, 4, 5-minute video is going to win over a client? We're going to put 30-second advertisements on YouTube. No one's going to sit through a 5-minute video about what to do if you've been injured through medical malpractice or things to consider when hiring a medical malpractice attorney. People were just telling him this is not going to work, and he just sucked it up. And he knew to save his practice, to provide for his family, he had to find something that worked. And guess what? YouTube worked. It slowly began to lead to calls and clients coming in. Today, Gerry is an attorney at one of the top medical malpractice law firms in the country, Kramer, Dilloff, Livingston, and more in New York City. In this episode, Gerry and I covered how his gamble in 2008 on a relatively new website called YouTube changed the course of his career and his legal practice, the formula he stumbled upon for attracting potential clients to his videos and eventually his firm, his system for coming up with ideas for videos that allowed him to publish more than 3,400 of them, what lawyers should have in their videos to keep viewers watching, the conventional wisdom that lawyers get wrong about educational legal YouTube videos, and how recording more than 3,400 videos actually helped him become a better lawyer and a better communicator. In this first clip with Gerry, he discusses the best way to create content that answers your client's questions and a framework for being able to pull out topics that you could use to create this kind of content.
I share this with so many attorneys across the country when I speak at different marketing events. And one of the things I tell them is, you as the attorney, you know every single aspect of how your type of case and how your type of law works, from the moment a client first calls you up until the time that you've resolved their matter. You know it cold, okay? And you should. Nobody asks you to go, you don't have to go ahead and go to your file cabinet to get an answer on how to answer a client's question. You know the answers. So ideally, one of the best ways to actually create content is take out a notepad, take out a legal pad, and simply write out a timeline. And the timeline is not your perspective of the timeline. It's from the client's perspective of what happens from the moment they realize they need an attorney all the way through every step of the way. There should be hundreds of little points from the time they're like, oh my God, I've been injured, I need to hire an attorney, to, okay, which attorney do I hire? To, okay, I've made an appointment with an attorney, what do I need to bring? To, I'm now at the attorney's office, who do I meet with? Who do I speak to? How long is this appointment going to last? What information are they going to ask of me? What do I have to give them? What's going to happen after this first appointment? So we know every single step of the process. The prospective client doesn't. So you take out your list and create that timeline of every little point, of every single thing. Now, I do not suggest creating a video or a blog article or any type of article for every little point. You know why? Because most of what we do each day is mundane. It's boring. Nobody's going to get excited and fascinated by you talking about some procedural nonsense. They're not. If you do, it's a waste of your time, I promise you. Instead, you have to pick out those points in the legal process that have conflict. Having conflict is where you will find the most interest from people who are searching. Because remember, the people who are searching for information have a problem. They don't know how to solve their legal problem. And now you need to get into the minds of these people, and you know what they're going through. You know exactly what problems they're experiencing. And now you just need to know where in the process they are. Have they already been injured in an accident? Are they in the hospital trying to get better? Are they just out of surgery? Did someone just bury their loved one and now they want to know whether or not to do an autopsy? You know, all of these things you have to understand and plot out on a simple timeline. But then focus on which of those things have the most conflict.
In the second clip, Gerry discusses how having to record videos and how having to edit his videos made him a better lawyer and a better communicator.
By learning to edit my videos, this is important. I learned how to focus what was important in my message and what wasn't. Just like when you edit a brief, when you edit an article, when you do it over and over again, you learn what's necessary and what's not. And by doing that over a number of years, I can tell you I became much better, much more proficient at communicating a shorter, concise, tight message, educational message, that transferred over to my ability to communicate with the judge, my ability to communicate with my adversary, with the claims examiner. And now I can tell the claims examiner in 2 sentences what my case is about and why they're responsible for my client's injuries. When we have a conference with the court, I now have the ability, instead of taking up 5 or 10 minutes going through the facts of the case, Judge, this is a case involving a woman, failure to diagnose breast cancer in a 41-year-old as a result of them failing to do X, Y, and Z. In just 2 sentences, I can do that. That was remarkable to me, and I didn't begin to notice that until I did many years worth of video. So again, it's dramatically changed the way I'm able to present my material when I'm handling cases, my ability to tell a story, and my ability to communicate, not just with viewers, but with my family, with my kids. So I think it's remarkable, and it is a learned process that can be learned. And the only way, no one is born learning how to do this. The only thing that you can do, and the best suggestion I can make, is start with your first video. Start with your first blog post. And now, film yourself, videotape yourself, take out your phone, do it. It doesn't matter if it's terrible. Now do the second one, and a third, and a fourth. And you know what? A year from now, you'll look back on that first video and say the same thing I did. It was the worst video in creation. But you will dramatically see how you will have improved in your presentation.
One of my takeaways from my conversation with Gerry is that educational content separates lawyers from the pack. It is easy to put your credentials up there and say you went to this law school and you were on this law review and you won this case and you won this award. But educational content is how clients find many lawyers these days. Now, this is obviously going to be more on the business to consumer side, the B2C side, the family law practices, the criminal law practices, the PI practices. But that doesn't mean that B2B lawyers can't put out educational content. Big law firms do it all the time, where they might cover what happened in a Ninth Circuit case or a Third Circuit case, and then they might talk about the impact of that case, or they talk about trends in their industry. Educational content is how you separate yourself from other attorneys, from other law firms. You don't just cram down people's throats promotional material about the awards you won and press releases. You educate. And that is how Gerry built his practice and built his firm and became a rainmaker, a big rainmaker at his current firm. It's how you can do the same thing with your legal practice. Another takeaway, you can never dive too deep into a subject area. You have to consider the audience questions and concerns, no matter how deep in the weeds you think that might be. And I give this example, one of Gerry's videos, I give this example of this topic all the time when I talk to attorneys and really anybody who wants to start doing YouTube videos. One of Gerry's videos, and we mentioned this in my interview with him a couple times, one of his videos is concerning when a client sees their lawyer joking with opposing counsel. And should that client be concerned that their lawyer is going to screw them over because they're joking with opposing counsel? Shouldn't they be mean and stern and not friendly to opposing counsel? Now, obviously, lawyers know that you can have relationships with opposing counsel, and you should have relationships because that's how cases get resolved. Easier and hopefully quicker than if you are truly adversarial and not really on good speaking terms. But a client doesn't know that, because why would they? So it's not crazy to think about all the various details, all the minutiae that a client might be thinking about, might be facing when it comes to their deposition or their lawsuit or trial. Questions such as how to prepare for a trial, or where do I sit in a deposition, or what's a videographer's job in a deposition. These questions can help put clients at ease, but importantly, they help position the attorney as someone who cares about the client, is there for the client, is knowledgeable and wise about what concerns the client, and further strengthens a relationship to bring that client in and hopefully get referrals down the road from that very same client. Okay, moving along to episode 40 with John Strohmeyer. John is the proprietor of Strohmeyer Law, an estate planning, tax, and probate law firm in Houston. I asked John in our podcast why he likes to call himself proprietor. That's at the very end of the podcast. Check it out. He's got a very funny answer. John is the host of 2 podcasts that serve different functions, which is why I asked him to come on to the program. The first podcast is 5-Star Counsel, and that answers the question, what would a law firm built by the founders of Disney, Four Seasons, and Amazon look like? The reason why he has that podcast is because before law school, John was the night manager of the Four Seasons Hotel in Austin, Texas, where he received the crash course on best practices for client service. With this podcast, 5-Star Counsel, it helps him brand himself as an authority on client service at law firms. His second podcast, No Unfinished Business, allows John to nurture his referral relationships by having referral partners discuss the areas that they work in that happen to be related to John's core practice of estate planning, taxes, and probate. It's a real savvy way for John to build relationships with his referrals and cultivate those relationships, because who wouldn't want to send cases to someone who has you on their podcast, who promotes you, promotes your appearance on their podcast? It's really an example of what you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. In this episode, John and I covered a bunch of things like how his time as night manager of the Austin, Texas Four Seasons Hotel impacted his legal practice, why he chose to host podcasts instead of doing blogs and writing articles or doing YouTube videos, why he launched a podcast focused on client service, but not really focused on attracting clients to his firm. This was not a lead gen type law podcast. This is a brand building podcast. Why he launched a podcast focused on referral partners, and his advice for lawyers who want to begin podcasting. In this first clip, you're going to hear him answer my question about why did he start a referral podcast. He could have done anything with referral sources. He could have done a podcast regarding anything. Why referrals? Why focused on referral sources?
So the idea was, how do I spend more time with my referral sources? How do I help my clients and potential clients who are saying, well, I've got this problem, and it's not a problem I'm going to be able to solve for whatever reason. It's legal work that I don't want to do. I don't want to develop a new specialty like Medicaid planning or real estate or whatever it is. Or it's just some area that's useful because they provide a service that's way outside of what we do, but it could be useful to somebody else. And the target audience for this really is those other referral sources. It's how do we help those referral sources find out what those problems are, help surface a problem long before it begins. Again, we're just trying to make them better advisors. It's really giving them every episode a sentence or two they can say in response to, here, this problem has presented itself. You should call this person who isn't John, it's whoever the guest was. We had somebody come on and talk about certain things you can do with life insurance policies. Great, you can call that person about how you can do a life settlement to sell your policy and maybe get a better return than just the cash value. It's a way of connecting people faster. And there's also the side benefits of we're going to send out links to these folks so that they can embed the content on their website, hopefully give us a backlink, which drives SEO for us. But it's also a more effective way of having a conversation with somebody about what they're doing. And sure, I'm happy to have coffee with people, but this way they can be in their office, I can be in mine. We're getting the same kind of interpersonal, social development, networking juice. But then we're recording this conversation and they get to look like a superstar at whatever their problem-solving ability is.
In the second clip, John discusses what he wished he knew about podcasting. And I'm going to tell you that his advice here, I think, could apply to any channel that you want to leverage for your content marketing and thought leadership marketing efforts.
One of the biggest things is knowing, why are you doing this podcast? Nobody wants to hear three guys in a basement having beers and just talking about random stuff. Your audience is coming to your podcast for a reason. And no matter how deep a niche you think there is, there's still some audience for it. Client service for lawyers. They're the people who are going to listen. It's not even all lawyers. It's small and medium-sized firm lawyers. And that even then, it's the ones who are willing to think about how do we do it better. But I need to give them something. The idea I was taught was, what is the mountaintop we're trying to get them to? What is the law firm that was built by the founders of Four Seasons, Disney, and Amazon look like? Like, we're trying to figure out what that law firm looks like. For No Unfinished Business, I'm trying to help advisors help their clients leave no unfinished business when they die. Let's make it easy for their clients. So what are the things that we can do to make it easy? How do we figure out those things? And by setting it up that way, it makes it so much easier to know this is a good guest for this podcast, or this is a good topic. Is it helping us climb that mountain, whatever that mountain is for this podcast? You have to figure out your voice. The voice is the same thing as figuring out the mountaintop. Like, how do you talk about whatever it is you're talking about? So focusing on what are we doing, where are we leading people has been one of the big things. I wish I'd figured out a little sooner.
2 takeaways from John that I got out of our conversation. 1, podcasts are versatile tools. They can be used for branding. They can be used to build referral relationships. They can be used any way you want. You can tinker with them and mold them to fit your purpose. If you want to answer questions about your client's concerns, you can do a podcast like that. If you want to focus on the industry that your clients are in, that you serve, you can do a podcast featuring industry movers, industry news. If you want to build referral relationships, do a referral relationship podcast. Just like blogs and articles and how you can tinker and orient them to go in the direction that you want them to go to match what you want to do with your audience and your target audience and how you want to impress them and get them to follow you and consume that content. Same thing with podcasts. And also you can repurpose them. You can record your podcast as a video, and then you slice and dice it for social media. And oh, by the way, you still have the audio file that you're going to upload for the podcast. You can use the podcast as part of your email marketing campaign. You can use it as part of your blogs. You can transcribe your podcasts and make them blog posts or refashion some of the lessons from your podcast into blog posts or articles. So they are versatile tools that can be repurposed and can be oriented to hit the audiences you want and carry the purpose you want them to carry, whatever that purpose might be. Second takeaway from my conversation with John is that your interests and your career path can be a differentiator you can leverage to build an audience through your content. Here, John's doing it with a podcast, his background of being the night manager at the Four Seasons Hotel in Austin, Texas. But if you've got a personal interest, if you've got hobbies, if you had a prior career as an accountant, as a nurse, as an economist, you could weave those interests, those hobbies, your previous career experiences into a podcast that can differentiate you from other people, especially if you're a pilot who is now practicing aviation law, or you're a nurse practicing some kind of like medical license defense law, or you're an accountant who is doing compliance work. You can mix in your background and give people a real interesting perspective on the work you do that maybe many other people who do what you do aren't going to have based on your background. And then with your personal interests or hobbies, people might want to listen to what you have to say about your hobbies, your interests. You can leverage them to build an audience. You can have guests on who are now new referral sources. It's a real interesting way to build content that is related to the work you do, but it's not necessarily the exact same thing as the work you do. It has potential to be something interesting and special that is going to be unique compared to other people who do what you do in your legal practice. Okay, final episode that we're covering in this Lowdown episode is episode number 42 with Adam Wash. Adam is a Florida franchise law attorney and co-chair of the Franchise Law Practice Group at Greenspoon Marder, which is an AmLaw 200 law firm based in Florida. The reason why I had Adam on was because he's doing something that many AmLaw 200 attorneys don't do, which is have a Twitter presence and educate and discuss the area of law they practice on Twitter with people who are in the industry, but might not necessarily be people that they already know. In this episode, Adam and I discussed a number of things like how he helped build a law firm that caught the attention of Greenspoon Marder when it eventually absorbed his firm, why Adam is using Twitter to help grow his practice and his authority, the kind of content attorneys should consider sharing on Twitter, how Adam balances sharing professional and personal content on Twitter, how he shares his thoughts on and insights on Twitter without venturing into providing legal advice, which is a huge concern for attorneys. It might be a little overblown, but it is a big concern. And you hear that as a big barrier, a big reason why attorneys don't want to get on to LinkedIn or Twitter because they don't want to share legal advice. He tackles that issue and how he could tell the time he was spending on Twitter was actually paying off. In this first clip, Adam talks about the importance of being genuine on Twitter and why that is the key method for connecting to people, even on a social media platform like Twitter that is known to sometimes not be as hospitable and pleasant a place to be as maybe LinkedIn or some other social media platforms.
What I found was that most lawyers at firms or even at their own firms felt they had this like governor, right? This sort of inability to be themselves online. And so, you see a lot of lawyers out there and many in the franchise space who have a Twitter handle, but it's basically just a bunch of retweets or a bunch of, just sort of, cut and paste sort of updates in the laws, very vanilla, type posting. And what I've learned over the years is being your true, genuine self is probably your best way to market and also to develop a book of business and to develop some longevity in the legal marketplace. What I found with Twitter was it wasn't like me just promoting all the successes and all the things that my firm was doing that I typically would see on LinkedIn. It was, hey, I'm watching something and I just want to put out my thoughts about it. Or, hey, I'm, interested in sharing something with my kid about my kids or something interesting that will maybe other like-minded people have also experienced. I can just put that out there. So interspersed with franchise specific successes and responses to questions that people might have on Twitter, which you can do instantaneously through the platform. You're really able to share with your followers like who you are, your personality. I've been on other platforms, including LinkedIn, and I really didn't feel the same sort of instantaneous connection with the people that were in my little community.
In the second clip, Adam discusses how he walks that line between providing general educational information versus providing particularized specific legal advice, and how to avoid obviously doing the latter and staying safely on the side of the line, doing the former, general educational information.
I think it's understanding the boundaries and the lines, obviously, between giving legal advice versus giving someone just a curbside opinion. It takes some time to sort of figure out where you should land on that. But I've found that, being able to show off my personality and be me, and combined with, the ability to present yourself as an authority in whatever field you're in, it does give you the sort of confidence to be able to share publicly general points that, might be interesting to whatever the topic is. So if for example, I'm posting something about changes in the FTC franchise rule guidelines for 2023, I'm not only putting out the information of, hey, this is going to impact how franchisors need to draft their legal documents and interact with franchisees, but I'm also giving people sort of a ability to respond, to communicate with me via DM. Franchisors that are, impacted, might see it and ask me some more personal questions about it. So I think over the years, I've done a nice job of sort of putting out the generic information, interacting on certain topics with, and giving a franchise spin on it. But then when it gets to actual legal advice or someone asking specific questions about their particular situation, saying, listen, I can give you my general guidance, but I do feel like, a more formal relationship will be required to proceed.
Two takeaways from my conversation with Adam. First, the importance of going where your clients are and engaging with them there. Adam knows who his target audience is. He knows who his target clients are and his target referral sources are. He has determined they are on Twitter. So he is disproportionately spending time on Twitter versus LinkedIn or other social media or other marketing and business development channels, because he knows he can reach a larger number of these potential clients and referral sources on Twitter. But he's not just on Twitter watching what they're saying and consuming information. He's actively engaging with them. He is getting a chance to show off his knowledge and wisdom to his target audience by actively engaging with them, by posting, again, educational information on Twitter. So you have to understand where your audience is, and you should not spread yourself thin. If your audience is not on Instagram, don't go on Instagram just because you think you should. If your audience is on LinkedIn, focus your efforts on LinkedIn. That's what Adam is doing when it comes to the franchise law universe, and him focusing on Twitter because that's where he believes he can meet the most amount of people in that universe who could be clients and or referral sources. Second takeaway, and again, I'm going to bang this drum, Adam walks through the difference between talking about general educational information versus legal advice. And the reason I'm banging this drum and the reason why I want this to be a key takeaway is because so many lawyers still today, they're concerned about giving away legal advice. They're afraid they're going to be giving specific, particularized legal advice on social media channels when they write a blog or write an article. They're obviously not going to, and they can take steps to avoid doing so. So Adam's point about how he walks that line between educational content and legal advice, I think are worth absorbing and worth thinking about, because you can walk that line without tripping over it. You can give out educational information without giving legal advice. And unfortunately today, there are attorneys who are missing out on engaging with their audience, positioning themselves as thought leaders, showing off their knowledge and wisdom because they are terrified that they are going to give legal advice. They shouldn't be terrified. Adam talks about why they shouldn't be and how to avoid crossing that line. All right, well, Adam's podcast was the 5th of the 5 episodes I was planning to cover on this Lowdown episode. Remember, the point is for me to give you a high-level breakdown, a high-level set of takeaways from each of the 5 most recent guests I've had on the Legally Contented podcast. I am by no means doing them justice. There is so much more information and juicy tidbits in each of their episodes. I would encourage you to download their episodes in full from the podcast feed and hopefully take those lessons learned from their episodes and apply them to your organization's own content marketing and thought leadership marketing efforts. We'd appreciate your feedback and your reviews. We'd appreciate you giving us any recommendations you might have for candidates for guests on Legally Contented. Again, we spotlight attorneys, in-house marketers at law firms, and in-house marketers at organizations serving the legal industry who are doing big things with their content marketing and thought leadership marketing efforts. Talk to you next time on Legally Contented.